Hello, friends, and welcome to today's podcast. I am beyond excited to share this conversation with you because it is with my dear friend, fellow artist, Cameron Moberg, also known as Camer1. Cameron's out of San Francisco, and he has traveled around the world creating beautiful murals and also hosting mural festivals. So him and his wife, Crystal, and their family have developed this incredible method of curating festivals and also creating community-driven projects. That means creating opportunities for communities to come together and create public art together in their neighborhood. Absolutely astonishing what they're doing. That's a big topic we get into today, as well as the nature of creativity, artwork as a form of prayer, and we dive into where ideas come from. We get into all kinds of stuff, especially towards the end we get into tips for young artists that are coming up and wanting to transition from hobbyist artist to professional artist. Cameron is a wealth of information in business advice for artists. I know he helped me immensely as I made that transition from hobbyist to professional. So before we get into the conversation, I want to do a little housekeeping. I recently had a show at Mothbelly Gallery in San Francisco with my friend Britt Hensey, Lady Hensey, and I just got my back catalog of work back that wasn't sold, so it's up in my online store. If you want to go check it out, that'd be amazing, much appreciated. And also, this is the beginning of the new year, so I have recorded about 8 other conversations with podcasts, so please stay tuned. I'm going to start to roll these out a little bit more frequently. Incredible conversations with artists, thought leaders, and meditation practitioners. So I'm just so beyond excited for this year, 2023, and some of the stuff that I can share with you. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation with Cameron Moberg. All right. Hello, everyone. Today we have Cameron Moberg with me. An absolute honor to say one of my closest friends and also mentors in terms of growing up into being a professional artist. So Cameron, would you like to maybe say hello and share a bit about yourself, and then we could just get into some fun topics. I have so many topics that we'll probably have to do multiple of these, because I was like starting to write them down, and I'm like, oh man, like just we'll just see where we go today. But
I know we've had so many amazing deep conversations. But yeah, my name is Cameron. I go by Camer1 SF. I'm from San Francisco, California. Right now I live in Visitation Valley. I think that's going to be our permanent spot for like the rest of my life, which I'm pretty excited about. Love living in that neighborhood. But I moved into the Mission when I was 13 years old, and then I lived in the South of the Market for, 12 years or something like that as well. So San Franciscan through and through. I've been an artist my entire life. That's my oldest memories, are doing art. I remember being like 5 years old and doing art with my Aunt Nancy at daycare, actually. That's my first memory. There's other memories mixed in there, getting in trouble with my brother and stuff, but definitely art is one of my first memories. And over the years, it kind of shifted into graffiti art, just growing up in hip-hop culture, and my brother was heavily influenced, and my cousin was heavily influenced by hip-hop culture. And at some point, I switched to solely letters. I think it was like in 92. And then maybe around 2002, I started combining letters with the things that I drew growing up. And at some point, I shifted fully over to murals and street art. So it's kind of me in a nutshell. Family man. Definitely a person of faith, and try to put that in my art. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's definitely in my art. And I love my wife and my kids, and that's me. Oh man, well, so many jumping off points already right in there. I met you probably within the first year that I moved to San Francisco in 2012, and we just hit it off. And I think at that time you were like, in reference to like your timing, saying going from graffiti to incorporating some representational imagery, not letter-based, in like 2002, you said. By the time we met, you were very much doing your art at a very professional level. And for me at that time, art was
I was kind of at that tipping point of doing hobbyist passion and being around you and a few other key figures in San Francisco when I first moved here, seeing artists do it full time. Really just gave me so much mentorship in learning how to do art as business. And you were just so gracious by being so open with me and talking with me about everything. And so were like, a couple of the other people I talked to. I think it's that's just something I'm so fortunate about for like my personal history, but also for like our culture is the openness about, really, things that like maybe seem like very private for like price points and like how to like deal with clients and like how to charge and like these things, you were so open with and pushing me too in a really like, humble and supportive way that you were central and tipping me into going, full time with my work. Yeah. But I think it's some of those like early projects we've done and things. And that's another thing, I guess, I would love for you to share a bit more with us is your involvement with community and art is absolutely astounding. Like what you do in bringing community and people together in public spaces is through the lens of art and collective collaboration is just so stunning. And you've had me be a part of several projects that you've managed and founded, and that's just something that I see you doing at another level that like everyone hopes that they could do someday. So I would love for you to share maybe like how you kind of first started doing like collective projects and community driven art projects and kind of like where you're at now and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, those are super kind words, man. I don't know how to take that really. Like, I don't know. It's community is, for me, it's something that I feel like I can't help. I don't know why that is, but I desire to see people accepted and people from different walks of life being in the same space, having a discussion. And I've really always been that way. I remember just being a kid or elementary school and middle school, and I loved to see the jocks hang out with the nerds and all of them hang out with the gangsters and the break dancers. And like, for me, it just didn't matter.
Were you that kid? Could you float between the different?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was that kid.
Yeah.
I like floated between all the groups.
Yeah. And I think that's something that is so important that art does. It allows us to have different perspectives and world experiences. And part of it might be because we're studying all the time. We're visually studying. We're studying people. We're studying nature. We're studying movements, we're studying culture, and it's almost the visual artist is like obsessed with staring at things and figuring it out, right? So maybe that's why we're like that, is we see these different people groups and what make them tick, and we desire to see peace and bringing something together. Like you're just like an art piece, right? You're taking different meanings or different subject matters and you're trying to work on composition, and so maybe it's just in a way its own type of art piece, right?
It is. I think the event is art. Yeah. That is art, is being able to create space that has all these different groups of people, different cultures coming together in one. You're right. That is like essentially like a canvas and taking different materials and pigments and mixing them in the right way.
Yeah. And it's not for the sake of art necessarily. It's I think it's the desire to see just like peace and love between people groups. I think that's just such a wonderful thing. So when it comes to the projects I do, you're absolutely right. Like in some ways, if it's not involving community, it becomes stale in a way to me, or it becomes not pointless. I don't think any art project is really pointless, but for me, it's just what makes me tick. Like even when it comes down to an art show, like personally, I just don't do them, and for many reasons. But recently, I did an art show, but it was only because it was going to become a community event. Like I didn't really care about the art show. I cared that we were doing something for the community, right? So I had my homie from high school DJ'd, and you know, we had an interactive mural out front where people could draw all over it with chalk, and that's really what it was about. And the price points were so low just so our neighborhood could afford it. And then part of the money goes to Rise Prep University, where I teach art. So it's like going to help me teach those classes that I do every first quarter of the year. So like really the art show wasn't about my show at all, you know?
Yeah.
So it's what makes me tick, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, there's just so much in there. You know, I'm a self-taught artist like yourself, and but I went through school studying cultural anthropology, and then I started to bring those two worlds together, art and anthropology. And, you know, basically in every culture, art drives culture, and it is like the producer of culture, and that brings, you know, everything from visual art to dance to song to, you know, clothing to food prep, you know, just everything, all creative expression, I think really brings culture together. And that's just something that, you know, I see you focusing on and having so much passion behind. And especially like in today's world where so much happens online, that I think being able to bring people together is, you know, something that I'm always scared that we're just losing more and more, with people just being online so much more. But it makes me very happy to see that when people do get together around, you know, events like yours and other collective, you know, creative events in public space, it's just, you can see it in people, you know, and you hand them a paintbrush and you say, you know, go fill in that area or go and do whatever you want. You know, they're just like, wow. And then you see people like helping each other out and like sharing ideas and sharing paint. It's so special. It
is, man. I mean, you could have, you know, the richest person and the poorest person in the same space, and none of that matters anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we're doing this together. You know, we're making this thing. And there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah. It made me think, you know, a long time ago, I put together like a presentation or something on like the history of street art. And, you know, Swoon from New York is just one of my favorite street artists. And she once said, I used to know this like by heart, but I haven't thought about this in years now. But she has some quote basically saying, the sign of a healthy city is its street art, because it's just like vitality. It's like the heartbeat of a place, the public art, you could say. And she says, you know, the sign of a healthy city is its street art. It's, you know, to have people have opportunities to be able to go out in their neighborhood and actually be a part of what their neighborhood looks like is invaluable.
Yeah.
And
so true.
It's just like, I see that, you know, different places. Anytime I travel, I'm always going to find like the murals and like the sculptures and just all like the cool art in any city or town. And it's always so fascinating to kind of see just, you know, the vitality really in those areas. And that's something I know that you've done in several different like towns and cities around the United States, where you've had ongoing like festivals that you curate and run. And I was just wondering if maybe you could share a bit more about what that's like, and maybe kind of like the changes that you've seen, you know, in those communities, and like, you know, working with the community. I mean, there's so much to it, but I'd love for you to like share.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I guess it started... Where did it start for me? Well, I used to run a rec center on 6th Street here in San Francisco, and we were open 5 nights a week for kids after school, like youth and children.
Which is a kind of rough area for people not in San Francisco.
Yeah, pretty rough area. And we lived down there as well. Like my wife and I at the time felt very, like we wanted to be transformational. And we felt that we couldn't do that by going into a neighborhood from elsewhere every day. We wanted to live there. So we lived there for like 12 years. And we ran this center, and in this center, I was super passionate about like going above and beyond with the events for these kids. Like, so we would put on the craziest events for these kids, like the craziest games. Like I would fill the basketball court with like 5 feet of foam and we'd play dodgeball in it so you could hide under the foam. Like just nuts stuff in the middle of the city, right? And so all of these years of just planning events, and then we even had an outdoor basketball court where we would have 18 and under graffiti battles where they could win a cash prize and all these kind of things. When I transferred over to full-time art, it was very natural to also be like an event coordinator or event planner for artistic experiences. So I was also dabbling in helping with a festival down in LA. This was like a faith-based festival, and I would run their art tents, and people would come have experiences, and we had a team down there we would work with and curate artists. So it was really like a pop-up 3-day festivals before art festivals were even a thing. Like this was like probably 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And we did that for 6 or 7 years. And then ultimately, I started doing festivals in small rural towns because everyone was focused on the big cities. And I realized that the smaller towns were so hungry for art, and they were hungry for like a change in their downtown areas and bringing life back to their downtowns. So we've been curating art in different areas in Indiana and Montana for the last 6 or 7 years. We've literally seen streets go from one shop to now having a cocktail bar, a brewery, a coffee shop, a gym, like just totally change overnight. Like the first mural was me on a street where nobody drove down and a bunch of cracked, broken up sidewalks and everything, and now it's people are down there, like things are happening, you know. So it's really, really exciting to be a part of.
Man, I've always had this analogy that artists are like mushrooms, and they go into like decaying areas and kind of like break them down even further, and then to the point that they are like rich with possibility, and then life comes back into them, and it's just like boom, an explosion of life. And then we get forced out, and then the prices go up, and we have to go somewhere else to do it.
Yeah, that's
to bring in like the big
things.
Gentrification topic. It's you know, it is what it is. It's a whole very deep area to talk about, and there's so much strife and struggle there. I don't want to diminish that by any means, but it's just something that I see, you know, and we see it throughout time, you know, like you go to like areas that don't have a high cost of living, where like a lot of artists and creative like will go because they're very passionate about doing their work, and then they make it like super cool, and then money comes in, and you know, on to the next one. But I was like, as you were talking about seeing those changes, you know, I grew up in small town Iowa, like Mount Vernon, Iowa, 3,000 people, eastern side of Iowa, and I did like one big community mural project there where we painted an entire city block, and it was just so awesome to see. And you know, seeing you continually work in Indiana and Montana as well, you know, you're bringing in artists from like all over the world, right? Like it's an international artist lineup. You know, what's that like for you, both working with the community and like maybe like discussion as to like, you know, what murals are going to happen or what styles of art, or like maybe even messaging, and then also working with the artists? Because, you know, I know what I really want to highlight with you and your projects is that how, again, community focused you are in opening dialogue and having meaningful conversation with the community, because there's a lot of other projects where it's like all these artists fly into a place, paint whatever they want, and then leave. And then the people there are kind of just stuck with whatever all these people came in and painted all their walls on. But I know that that's something that you take so much care and consideration in working with the community. And so I'd love to hear more about like what that process is like for you.
Absolutely. Well, we could start with the subject of gentrification, because I do talk to the communities about that. So I've had numerous conversations with community leaders, and you know, in the beginning stages, we often have a group discussion of whoever wants to come and things like that. And so we're discussing like styles, and I'm showing them images of different artists and things they might like to see in the murals, and kind of get a list of things down that I could later give to the artist. And then at the same time, I say, hey, this is what murals have done for communities. And it's not the muralists who are gentrifying, but it just happens. Like people get excited about the art, and that becomes the new hotspot to live.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's backed by developers. In my case, none of my festivals have been backed by a developer, not once. It's generally grassroots, like us, just working super hard to get state grants or working with local nonprofits to get grants and things of that nature. But it still naturally happens. It becomes the hot spot. So we tell them this is what we've seen in other cities. Now, what you do with this is up to you. You have an opportunity to open a shop or start a business and remain, or just keep your house. Like, don't sell it. Just remain, and you'll benefit from this. Or if you so desire, you can sell it, because your prices on your property is going to go up, So at least they're aware of what has happened with like gentrification in San Francisco or, Oakland or whatever. And I share the stories, but then they at least have an option to decide what they want to do with that. And for the most part, the people that I've communicated with, none of them have left. They haven't sold their houses yet. They're still sticking around. And some of them have started businesses and taken advantage of the opportunities. So I think if you make people aware, and the way you approach it, there is a way to do it without quote unquote gentrification, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I would define gentrification as a displacement of a people group, whereas other people would define it different. So I think that's also important, is how do you define gentrification? So I'm talking about it on that level. And then as far as curating artists goes, we just don't want to work with like too cool for school artists. So like I Facebook stalk artists like crazy. I'll go out to another festival to meet them. And if they're just kind of rude, or like, think they're all that.
Too cool for school.
Yeah, dude. I don't even care. I'm not even going to work with you.
Yeah.
And, because we just want a good vibe. Like, I look at our festivals as summer camp for artists. Like, we want everybody to like each other and get along, but we also want them to, like, there might be some homeless guy sleeping next to them, and I don't want them to treat that person like crap, or anybody else who walks by, right? Like, so it's really important for me to work with artists who are going to love the communities as much as we do. So that's kind of how we curate. We just stalk people.
Have you noticed like any patterns? Like, I don't know, saying like, trying to find these artists that have a certain level of, moral integrity, that are good people, you've done so many of these, I'm just wondering if like you've seen any patterns, or if there's any kind of like traits that are similar between these people. I don't know, does anything like stick out?
I mean, I generally see, like, on their stories, I'll see them hanging out with friends or with family, and they just look like, they're enjoying life, where off other people I've worked with, when it's like selfie this, selfie that, it's like a little bit different. Not to say that everybody's like that. Because I know that's also a generational gap, right? So not that everybody's like that, but I have had those experiences. And then there's other times where I've been forced to work with artists because like I'm working with a city organization and they want a specific artist.
Gotcha.
And I've tried to warn them, like, this is not somebody I want to work with, and it's not going to be good. So I would like you to work with that person when they come, because I need to focus on the artists that are actually like productive and as a person, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out it ended up being like the worst nightmare of situations.
And you saw that coming, so you were just kind of like you're in tune with yourself, and your experience is enough for you to be like, red flags going off with this.
Man, for sure. And the other thing that's different about our festivals is we probably have the smallest fraction of some of these bigger festivals, and we still pay every single artist, which many of them, they're starting to do that now, but that was not a trend in the beginning.
Yeah.
Everyone comes and works for free, but they get to party,
Exposure.
Yeah, exposure and
which
partying.
You can't diminish. There is truth to exposure, but in the arts world, we just are so used to seeing and hearing about that all the time, and unfortunately, most people are really taken advantage of with that. Yeah. But yeah, I've been a part of some festivals back in the day, a little bit more than recently, and yeah, it's not much pay, but that's something that you have always put number one, really, working with community and then artists fair pay. Yeah. And that's something that I think, really makes you stand out again compared to other events and festivals and things.
It gets tricky still. It's interesting because there's been times where artists, they found out what I got paid as a curator or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just the lack of understanding of we're working on this project for 6 months. And you also came in for a week. Yeah. Right. So trying to help artists understand that side of things too is that.
Yeah. And you wouldn't be here if I didn't put in 6 months of work.
Yeah. We're prepping walls and, buying flights. And so we need.
And also your 20 years previous of art career, building up your company to be able to run a festival, to be able to invite you to paint here.
And it's not just me, it's my wife too. And we're both working. We started planning our Montana festival in January, and it won't happen until August. And I'm having meetings with them at least once a month, sometimes more. Mm-hmm. We're already curating. We've already locked in Royal Dog and Cobri are coming out for that one. And, we have a bunch more artists we have to lock in. So it's a ton of work that artists don't realize as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I think there's. I want to pick your brain on so much more, but I kind of want to bring us into kind of another area of discussion that, I know you and I have just absolutely get thrown into hours and hours of conversation, but it's really, about art and. Kind of like a spiritual practice. Yeah. And that's something that I've been diving deeper into myself, really the last few years, kind of since right before, becoming a dad was absolutely, the biggest change in my life. And you have 2 boys who are in their teens, I'm just got a little 2.5-year-old girl, so I'm pretty new to this, but it was pretty much right when we found out that my wife was pregnant. It was really just a watershed event where I started to really look at I wasn't number one anymore. Yeah. And so that I think really kicked loose a profound shift in myself and a desire to become the best version of myself as I can. And, for me, I previously had a meditation practice already because I'm non-secular. I don't prescribe to any religion. Mm-hmm. I very much love and appreciate the core components of most of them. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I draw my spiritual practice. But the last few years, I've been just getting more and more deep into it and really trying to find and cover my true self. Yeah. And that is in service of others more than me. Yeah. And I benefit from that too. But man, you and I have had some conversations about art and life and our place in this universe and creation, evolution, all of it. And something that thinking about, sitting down with you today is I wanted to ask you, what are ideas and where do they come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, man. I could go in so many
Just routes. Want to warm up the pan and then drop that in there and just see what you got.
Yeah, so my presupposition, my starting point is my faith, which is Christianity. Yeah. Right? Now, I'm people, I'm open to people believing whatever they want, and that's why I think you and I have gotten along and had so many great conversations, because we have a lot of similarities but then a lot of differences. I still remember our first time chatting about it. I think we were like 5 beers in on a bench in San Luis Obispo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's such a good night, bro.
Oh man, down by that creek.
Yeah.
We were on that like park bench.
Yeah.
And it was at night, and we were just chopping it up.
Yeah, it was so good. Yeah. And, Christianity does have a lot of stigmas, and I don't talk about my faith often publicly because of that. I even see a lot of my friends recently, even on their posts, just like clowning on Christianity and just making fun of it, and I would never do that to anybody's face. So lately I've been more open to speaking about it because people I know are just trashing it so much, you know. So it's a little unfair right now, but also Christians have done a lot of wrong in the name of God as well. So I understand the other side of it. Now, going back to the question, what are ideas? So if my presuppositions are Christianity, which is essentially I follow teachings of Yeshua, which is modern day name is Jesus, right? So for us, we believe that we're created in the image of God, right? Doesn't mean we are God or anything close to God, but we're created in his image. And then we also believe that God created all. So if God created everything and we're created in his image, then we are designed to be creators. Like if we're replicated after the best creator, then I'm designed to create.
Yeah.
There's been a mystery for some time in the church. There's different beliefs of, is God in full control, like we're robots, or are we somewhat autonomous?
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to believe in both. I think that there's love in decision making, right? Like if you control someone, there's no love in that. So I don't see the love of God in a controlled robot, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like our kids, like where if my children have to make their own decisions and own discoveries, and that is part of loving my children. So there's other times where I think God is God and he's way bigger than I am and he could do whatever the heck he wants. Like, who am I to question God, right? So there's that in mind. So going back to ideas, I think mine are from God, and I think actually yours are from God. I think anything that is good comes from God. That's another scripture. So anything good comes from God. So it's up to us if we're going to use those ideas for love and peace and joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, all these things that are good, right? Are we going to use these ideas for good, or are we going to decide to use them for selfishness? So that is my perspective of ideas. Yeah.
I asked that question because, you and I have talked before in the past about making art like as a spiritual practice. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you said something once that was like, maybe we were talking about like prayer or something, and you said, well, like to me, like making art is my communion with God. And that was before I really started to do this new level of spiritual work on myself. And that conversation jumped out to me a little while ago, because I think about when I'm like in flow state, when I'm in the studio or painting a wall or like making something, it's like it feels like it's just coming through you. It's like you like get your analytical thinking mind out of the way and just let it come through. And for me, like doing this like spiritual work, like I'm one to believe in the way I kind of describe this like all connecting source is like a collective consciousness, and it spans all, and that's like non-linear time. It is like all and always. And then like art is kind of like this source expressing itself through us in different mediums.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I don't know, this spiritual, like, I don't know, evolution of like the source you would call God, me like source, but this ever-present, all-knowing consciousness that has created everything and is continuing to expand and grow.
Yeah.
It's like we're helping in that. And so to like hold that back would be like, I don't know, not like almost damaging or something.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to spin off in so many different ways that I want to take it, but like
I think it's so good, man.
Yeah, I just and so for me too, because yourself and several other friends and family members that definitely do come from a traditional religion, Christianity or Judaism. For my family and friends, it's like you use the word God, and for me, I was just like always like didn't prescribe to that, but now during some of these like really profound meditation practices that I've been doing in my own studies, I use other words, but I fundamentally understand like these are all the same thing. So like we're talking about this same thing. You have your terminology, I have mine, other people have theirs, but I'm starting to understand it. And because I grew up in a very like atheistic house and spiritual house, like, but more atheistic in much more just like the cosmos and linear time and like all this stuff. And now I'm like, oh man, I've had enough experiences where like all that stuff slips away, and there's just like this collective, like this ever-present source. And so I don't know, I was just thinking like today I wanted to like get into it with you because we haven't talked like deep in a while about this, and I've just gone through so much change in my life. And I always just am connecting it back to the art, because I fundamentally believe that humans are born creators. It is our birthright. And now being as a dad, like this is just so in my face all the time. It's like kids come like preloaded. Like they have personalities already right out the gate. And then we also have like the nurture side, the environment in which they grow up. But every kid, like, show me one kid who you give them a crayon and a piece of paper and they're not drawing. And so we come out creating. And then unfortunately, most of us lose that creative like expression. And I declare that is really hurting society from individuals first to the collective. And, Brene Brown is an incredible social researcher. I just love all of her books. And she talks about this a lot. And she has, I forget which book it is, but she talks about art scars is what she calls it. And she says, unused creativity is not benign. That means we all need some kind of creative expression. And if we don't express ourselves, it starts to fester and like metastasize into like bad things, and that can be addiction, it can be just a bad mood, it can be like being mean and horrible to other people or to yourself, and like it turns into this thing that creates so much suffering. And so these are like things that I've just been really starting to understand as being a dad now, and getting deeper into my practice of like understanding my place in the grand scheme of things, and also being like an artist. And I've just been finding so many similarities, and I know that you've been thinking and practicing in this field for a lot longer than I have. So I'd love to hear your and that's basically is where I was like, what are ideas and where do they come from? Because for me, it's like, again, it's like getting out of the way and just letting, like, for me, it's like letting the universe like evolve more. And that's through more creation.
For sure. I agree with that 100%, man. And unfortunately, we're seeing it stunted so much. Like, dude, I feel like high school is where creativity goes to die. At least in America. It's so sad, bro. It's like you have all these young minds that are just so excited for life, and then look at students when they get in high school, they just become like zombies. It's like fall in line, rigor, right? It's crazy. Now, do I think we need to learn responsibility and, how to work? Absolutely. Like, you could ask my kids, I'm on them. Like, like they need to know how to do well in this world. But to kill joy and to stifle creativity is heartbreaking. You even look at the school system as they slowly weeded out the arts. That's insane to me. My wife and I went and worked at a juvenile hall in Australia, and it was gorgeous. The juvenile hall was so gorgeous. The kids were in class every day, and when I say class, it was math and stuff like that, but then they also had wood shop, and they had a nice gym, all this stuff for rehabilitation. Well, I've also worked in the juvie in Oakland and San Francisco.
I've done a project at the San Francisco
They are
one.
preparing those kids for jail.
Yeah.
You walk in, it's cinder block white and gray walls. It is so depressing. It's unbelievable. And I told the chief over there, I don't know if it's called a chief over there, but their main police officer, I was like, we don't have art in schools. If we have it, it's from an external program that brings it in. They were floored. They're like, you're creating criminals by doing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So it
which
blows,
is an income source in this country.
Exactly. It's pretty mind-blowing. So, I think we need to do a better job at encouraging creativity, and gosh, just the amount of homework these kids get now, dude. It's wild. But this is a whole nother rabbit hole. Dude.
Well, speaking of rabbit hole, that's my wife's company, the Rabbit Hole Children's Theater. Yeah. But that's it too, because like she has her business, the Rabbit Hole Children's Theater, which is not a traditional theater in any way. Really, it's a studio that's all about cultivating creative confidence. Yeah. And we do that through theater, which is amazing. That's her background. And theater is really like 14 art forms combined in one, Yep. And so what she sees, in working with kids ages, 2 to 10, it's like, the prime time of imagination and make-believe. And then she's trying to get those just cultivated as much as possible. But it's like getting in middle school and high school that you just see, like you said, just like the cliff drops out and kids just get...
There's no more wood shop. There's no more piano classes. Yeah. There's no more metal shop, home ec.
And it often is like an outside source. Like she'll go and teach at schools in their after-school programs. Some schools have more emphasis on art and creative expression than others. But, our daughter's 2.5, and we're like, have been working in this field for 10 years, and I feel like we're walking into the fire. Like we're like, oh my God, we got to figure out, like, are we just going to, we know that the institutionalized educational system in the United States molds kids into workers instead of finding their spark and putting everything they have to let them be who they really are. And so we're like, kind of like at this point, we're like, what are we going to do? Like, there's homeschool, there's charter schools, there's like other things. So we're like very conscious of this. And we've both been working in this area for so long where, you see these kids come out of high school just like not having creative expression anymore. And then they go into adulthood. And this is where Brene Brown talks about art scars. And she did these like research projects where she would talk to adults, and they found out like clear as day, like huge percentages of people that felt, depression or anxiety or even physical problems, physical health, it was low. And the correlations come back to they had some traumatic event when they were in their youth that stripped away their belief in themselves of doing anything creative. And it was all like around some like art event, like so some way that they were expressing themselves, and they were either like judged, socially shamed. That doesn't look like an alligator, like something where it just like it severed them, and then it was like a major fork in the road. And the rest of their lives they've done this, And so what I was thinking of is, you know, I've done so many projects with you, also some of my own, but a lot of them are with adults, which is so fascinating because that's probably most of these adults that come in and get to, and you hand them a paintbrush and you say, go express yourself, you know? And from my personal experience, people are like, oh, I can't draw a stick figure. And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And you see them 20 minutes later, and if they're able just to like get it going, the smile on their face and the energy that they have is just like so different from before.
Oh, it's incredible, man. I mean, I remember teaching, I think it was a group from Nutra Dog Food. They like flew in from Washington.
Whoa.
So most of their people that worked there, they're 50s, 60s, you know, were older. They didn't know what they were going to do. And they walk in and they see that they're spray paint and they look pissed off, bro. They look so pissed. And by the end of the class, they were just blown away. It was like they found a new religion, man. Like it was like they were just totally transformed. You know, they had so much fun, and I think it's one of the joys about street art is it's about the process. It's a very physical art form. It's not rigid to one piece of paper. You're moving your whole body. So I think that's partly why people find so much joy in it. But
they're getting down low. They're reaching up high. They're doing big sweeps of the arm and stuff. Yeah.
But you're right, man. I mean, it's crazy how we stunt that in people. And we live in such a judgy culture, so that's
the other thing is like I feel like the hesitation for so many adults, even like high school kids and up, like we were saying, like we just have social media now, which is so easy to see literally the best of the best of anything happening from around the world in your pocket, so that people just like don't even want to try. And
for me, I was not a naturally good artist. So when I'm teaching the students, like the middle school and high schoolers, I'll show art from when I was young. And it's not good. Like it's pretty bad. But I had pretty encouraging parents. So in second grade, my mom took my work and put it in a coffee shop, and I had my first art show.
Cool. That's awesome.
When I was getting in trouble with graffiti, my mom still made me a graffiti birthday cake, you know? And so it's like the power of adults in students' lives is so important. So adults that are listening, don't be an ass to kids. Like, if it doesn't look like what you want it to look like, who cares? Like, just be encouraging. No matter what you went through, like, it doesn't matter what you went through. Like, you already went through it. Like, give the next generation a chance of encouragement, you know? So I think that's really, really important for people to understand the power of their words and their actions, especially when a young person's mind is still developing. And that's something I've talked with like adults with, and some of the projects I've done, and like, you know, events that I've done, painting activities and stuff. I'm just like, look, I'm going to talk about creative expression. We're going to do this with visual art, but really this is creative expression. And what the most important thing, if you could take anything away from today, if you don't have some kind of creative practice in your life, I want you to like leave here and try to find something. And that could be cooking, that could be dancing, writing, visual art. It could be landscaping, the way you do your yard. Just find something where there's number one, like no comparison. Like just, this is just for you. And it's not about the end result. It's about the process. This is about feeling. And what we're trying to get is you to feel that excitement that you used to have because you were a kid. And absolutely. All kids have this. We lose it. But you see people who have it still, and I feel like there's just this kind of lightness to them because they're doing something that we've always done throughout all of human history, which is make things.
that's what separates us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're so different. We can make things, and we can talk about them, and we can enjoy them.
Yeah. It's the process, man.
Process.
Right? That is one of the most important things. I paint a lot of birds. I used to paint them more often, but then everybody and their mama started painting them. So I don't paint them as much anymore. But the reason I started painting them was somebody asked me, what is it like to paint a big mural? And I was trying to visually describe that. I was like, if I were to answer that question in a painting, what would it look like?
Mm-hmm.
I started to think about my childhood, and I would get asked by teachers, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would tell them a bird. Mm. And like they would laugh, kids would laugh. Oh, you can't be a bird. Come on, what do you want to be? Well, then I'll be an airplane. And like, because I remember running on my lawn with my arms out, pretending to be a bird or a plane, and that feeling of weightlessness, feeling like it's just me just being a silly kid, like feeling the wind, when you're young, like your senses are more heightened. So just remembering the wind, all that, right? So if I could visually describe what it's like to paint a mural for me, is the feeling of weightlessness, the feeling of just being a kid again, especially when I'm up on a boom lift and I'm just by myself.
Yeah.
And like, there's no one else around, But you're right. You're in that flow state. There's nothing else. And I mean, even people ask, what are you thinking about? Nothing. I'm not thinking about anything, especially once my first sketch is up and I don't have to worry about proportions. All it is moving. It's feeling the can in my hand and listening to the sound, and it's just me in that environment.
Yeah. And that's like, to describe flow state, there's a great book on Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi or something, psychologist, wrote this book, Flow, and so much work has been done after that, but it's the feeling where time slips away. Like you're not thinking about other things. You are completely focused on the activity at hand. And again, that can be anything, but this flow state, again, going back to like this idea of like, where do ideas come from, or painting as prayer or a spiritual act. I think these are like all correlated in this really profound experience that unfortunately not many people get, but we all start out with as kids. But I'm thinking, like, as you were talking about being up on the boom lift and just those experiences of painting, I see that visual representation in your art, and I wonder if we can kind of like kick off into another area, which is like your transition from, like you still do letters and graffiti based work, but your murals and representational imagery with animals and plants, and also just like, some great, kind of abstraction work that I've seen you do too. How is it like, have you noticed any like trends that, that as your progression as an artist, have you experienced these like consciously as they come? And as being a professional artist, are you making decisions kind of looking down the road in terms of like style or feeling and what it is like that you as an artist on this planet at this time are bringing to the world? Yeah, that's a great question. I'm studying constantly. I'm definitely doing my best to study trends, studying street art, studying interior design, color, trying to learn color better because I'm color deficient. Like I can't see certain colors, but I've been able to learn colors through my wife. Actually, it's been a really interesting journey there. So she's like my color
corrector, and then I study what I'm looking at to try to understand it.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And then colors change depending on what colors they're mixed with, like in the color palette. But so studying all these things all the time, and I am always trying to be ahead of what's happening. For example, a lot of people like to hire muralists that paint nature. It's almost like pop art, right? Mm-hmm. Now, thankfully, that's what I've always drawn. And then also when it comes to spirituality, I feel that I see God in nature. Like I feel that he reveals himself through creation, right? So I paint a lot of nature because that is like the closest thing I see of who God is, right? So that's important to me. Now, everybody is doing that now. Everybody is painting flowers, birds, animals.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to figure out how is mine going to be different, right? So then geometry. So, well, first it was transparency became popular in graphic design because of street artists. So we were painting a transparent effect by doing color changes over an image.
Yeah.
The next year, I think every year Photoshop releases what are the trends in design. They started talking about transparency in design. Yeah. So then you started seeing that. And this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And now everybody's doing transparency. They'll paint an animal with like a color swatch going through the whole mural, and it changes colors as it going over. So now what I've been working on is fragmented imagery, but many people are starting to do that now. So like taking your focal point and breaking it into like multiple pieces that are like digitized, right? Yeah. So I'm starting to do murals like that, and I have some designs coming up where I'm painting like that, and it's really fun actually. It's really complicated to do. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. We'll see how that goes. I've done a couple that are a combo of all of those things. And then when it comes to graffiti, I kind of just keep that separate from my street art mural world. My graffiti crew, whenever we're together, I'll do graffiti, but then outside of that, I focus on predominantly street art and murals,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that with the trends and stuff. It's definitely, again, with social media now, you can just take the current zeitgeist of what's going on, and from a global perspective, and just seeing like color trends come in and pass through, and styles as well is always very interesting. But for me, like, I am okay with that. Like I'm an artist who always wanted to do something different all the time. So I think trends actually lend itself to who I am as a person, because I want to paint things I don't know how to paint. Yeah. And that has always been my best teacher. Like when I went full-time art, I would get asked, can you paint this? And I would always say yes. And in my head, I'm like, how the heck am I going to paint that? Yeah. No idea how I was going to do it. But I always did it. And if it was crappy, I would just work it until it was correct. So for me, trends create an opportunity to try something new. And at the same time, I'm trying to make those trends my own or come up with something new. But really, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just repeated in different ways, right? So, yeah, for me, I enjoy it. Yeah. No, that's true. This kind of gets into mindset, which is really something I've been trying to understand more and like put intentional work on with myself, because it drives everything in your life, your mindset and how you approach situations. And so to be in a constant state of growth for your art and business, that is the only way for me to see. It's like, you're gonna encounter some things, and things, we live in a constantly changing world. That's just, everything's always changing, everything. And so to be able to adapt with that and have a mindset of like, I love this constantly changing world that we're in. I love that things are always new because it pushes me to grow in new ways and to become a better artist and become better at communicating what I hold dear to myself.
Yeah.
To live in that state, I think is an opportunity compared to like some, I think anybody can find people where it's like they kind of stay stuck in one area and it's like the rest of the world just kind of continues to roll along.
Oh, I thrive in uncomfortable. Like that is like my if I'm uncomfortable, I know I'm going to be okay. And
You're growing.
Yeah, so not with every mural, but I desire to have a little bit of stress mixed in with that, it's not a bad place to be, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, when you feel muscles grow, that burn is stress. That's pushing you beyond what your body probably wants you to do.
Yeah.
But that gives you more strength for the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because, man, yeah. And then I start to gauge it. It's like, if I'm not stressed out on this job, then like, what am I, like, I'm not pushing myself. Like sometimes I could just like default to something that's like I'm very comfortable with, I've done before a lot.
Yeah.
But, man, yeah, the last couple of years I've had some projects that are like completely new outside anything that I've done before, and God, I was scared.
Yeah.
Like, ask my wife, Brooke. She is just like, oh my, like Strider, and I'm like,
yep.
And she's just like, she understands it, she sees it, but she knows growth is happening there. But I can get just like too bogged down in my mind too. She's like, you're doing this. This will be okay. Like, you're gonna do it. I have to remind myself of that.
Yeah. Fear can either, like I talked about this recently in another podcast. It was all around fear, but fear can either stunt you or it can push you, like it's either going to stop you or push you forward. But I think fear is a lie, man. Like we shouldn't let that dictate our lives or control us at all. Like progress wouldn't happen. New things wouldn't be invented. People wouldn't take chances. And in some ways I've let fear the last like 6 years of my life stunt me when it comes to community. Like I've still been doing it, but in the art business side of things and even in the church, I got really, really burned on people. So I was good in the sense of like, I have no fear when it comes to art. Like I'm not going to let it stop me, but I actually did let it stop me in trusting people again and like having rich, thriving relationships. I kind of became a hermit, right?
Yeah.
So I think fear is so dangerous in all aspects of life. And, sometimes we fail at an art piece and it sucks. Like I have pieces like that, right? Or sometimes I've been hurt by a person really, really bad, and I probably shouldn't talk to that person anymore, or maybe I just don't need them in my life. But to allow that to dictate future relationships, I'm learning, is a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
So this for me has been a year of getting rid of fear and getting back into seeing the best in people. I don't want to let greed from other people or selfish people, I don't want to let them dictate the love and the joy that I feel that God wants to work through me or through others people towards me. So just been kind of working through that.
Oh man, that rings so true to me. It's like when you were talking about fear, it made me like the concept of ego came up for me. And in my spiritual world, you hear people talk about like letting go of the ego, like even destroying the ego. But it's like, like your ego is what keeps you from not walking out in the street before looking both ways. Like your ego is keeping you alive. Where I think people run into trouble is that the ego gets like too out of control, where they start to become like self-absorbed or just like allowing their mind to like play a negative tape about itself. And the ego just wants to be right. So there comes like this balance point where you have to like kind of like pull in the rope a little bit and be like, ego or fear, like, thank you. Number one, thank you, because you've allowed me to get to where I'm at, but for this next part, like, get in the back seat because I'm driving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not going to say get out of the car because, like, you are a part of me. I need you. We are one.
Yeah.
But you're not running the show here. Like, I'm taking the wheel and we're going forward together.
Yeah.
But you're not driving this ship anymore right now.
Yeah, man. It's just so lonely when you let that stuff win, you know? And I do think we're in a bit of a dangerous time in society with social media. As much as I love it, you know, there's a danger to just so much self-absorption right now, and people are forgetting that you will be more happy if you serve others and love other people more than yourself.
Yeah.
And right now there's a very, like, you got to love yourself, and which is great, absolutely true. But I know that when I'm, like, closed off and I'm not, like, giving of my time and my attention to others and elevating my community above myself, those have been some of my darkest, saddest moments.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think we're both, like, extroverts. Like, we very much thrive on being around and in and with people.
Yeah.
You know, definitely have some very close friends that are more introverted.
Yeah.
And that's, like, just a completely different, you know,
for sure
way.
And even in introversion, like, I think there's still there's a need for community. Like, they're just, communities are different, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's more elevating others is still important, I think, to an introvert. It's just going to look different.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to be the way I do it or choose to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, we're social beings. We're social creatures. Like, we wouldn't be where we're at today if we were born and then just ran off into the woods and took it. Like, we need each other. And this is my anthropology side. Like, we are social beings, and all of this world that we have created with all of its ideas and objects are the end result of people working together.
Yeah.
Like, we are in collaboration.
Yeah. And we're teaching, society is teaching people right now to just be very individualistic. It's like, what do I need to get mine? What is to the next phase, right? Or whatever. And I mean, at 40 years old, I've learned that's a sad road to go down, you know? So if there's young people listening, you know, I know you got to figure out your career and make your money and do whatever you got to do. But it's lonely alone, you know, like it's don't view people as stepping stones, like view them as a person, and you know, they still might help you get to the next phase, but there's just a lot of using for individuals, personal gain right now in society and life.
So what can we do to start to, you know, tip the ship in a new direction?
Just don't be like that.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it. No, because it's easy to become that because there's so many people doing it.
Yeah,
so
it's just becoming the norm.
You start to assume that this is what you're supposed to do, right? Whether you move to San Francisco for tech or you're jumping into the art scene, you're being taught that it's like on the backs of others all the time to get to that next point in job. Now, like, I know you got to look out for you know, don't get taken advantage of, but at some point, like, just make it about the excitement of the journey of the project, you know? Like,
you just use the word excitement, which is like been my new guiding word. Like, follow your excitement. Yeah,
there'll always be another project. It's, you know, like, it's just have fun with what you're doing right now. Find joy in it. Find joy in your colleagues. Find joy in other artists. You know, find joy in curators, which I'm learning to do. I didn't talk to any other curators for a long time. You know, where now I'm like working with more curators and realizing, look, everybody's just struggling with the same stuff, you know, and like, so I'm trying this year. I've been much more open and hoping to be more loving, you know, if I can, you know, so.
Yeah. You know, I think, ultimately, you know, we always hear it's like, oh, you know, money doesn't buy happiness. And it's like, well, if you're really destitute, like, you need a certain level of money to just like have the basics covered. And then once you have that, then it's like increasing amounts, like, does it really like buy happiness? And you hear the stories about, the super depressed billionaires, and then, you see the other side, and you and I both traveled around the world, have been to like very, low cost of living areas, slums and things like that, and seen just the happiest people I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And so it's like how do we start to, like, I think everyone's just basically, all things filter back to like feeling and emotion. And so it's your experience of your daily life that really is what matters. And so again, getting back to mindset, it's like the story that you're telling yourself, number one, you can control. And that's what meditation has taught me so much. And like, I am actually not my thoughts. Yeah. It's like, oh, fire truck. Busy San Francisco. Allowing thoughts to come through me. And again, this is like going back to my question with you about ideas. Yeah. But like noticing, like having the space to actually stand back and notice thoughts as they come and be like, where did that come from? Yeah. Like, I did not choose for that to come, but here it is. And then having the ability to respond and like let it go. And so being able to control yourself to a degree has changed everything in my life. And so then I start thinking about everything is filtered through feeling and emotion. And so like money can be a part of that, but like you were saying, like if you're just self-centered and only bringing yourself up, then that feeling isn't probably very good at the end of the day. You might not have the strong connections and friendships as others do. You might not have the sense of purpose or enjoyment of life. And those are feelings. Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, how can we make, like, looking out for others and helping each other rise up cool? Yeah. How do we make that cooler than just like flexing how awesome you are and how much money you're making? How do we do that?
It starts with every individual. Yeah. That's why I write Be the Change on almost everything. It's like, it's not, it is only going to get popular if everybody just sees other people do it. Yeah. Right? And like see the joy that comes from it. Recently my oldest son turned 18. My father and I took him down to Guatemala for like a mission trip / adventure trip. And, we put on I have like 6 members in my graffiti crew that live down there. And we put on a little mini mural festival in this poor area. We had like piñatas and music for the kids. And my son was like, man, everyone is so happy here. And I'm like, yeah. Why do you think that? And like, so we had this discussion. Wow. Yeah. But I think it comes down to selflessness. Yeah. Like, I think it's important to wake up every day and tell yourself you are not the most important person in the world, and neither is your art. Like, there's a million of you. Yeah. And it will keep you humble, and then think about people that you feel like you're supposed to engage with, right? And also having the realization that you engaging, which sometimes we use the word serve, like you serving another person or go out of your way for that person, you are not their salvation either. So having the realization that like you're doing this because this is just what humans should do, but it doesn't make you of any importance. Like, it's like just realizing like the humility of like that, I think is important. Just keeping our perspective in check. Like me going to Guatemala to quote unquote serve. No, they're serving me. Like they're teaching me that joy comes from friendship and being involved in community. So me, just because like maybe I have the money to buy some paint for some other artist, that's not. No, what they're giving me is so much more, right? Yeah. So I think it's having a real healthy perspective of we're not the most important thing. Let's serve others but also do it in a way that is like, we're not really bringing much to the table. Like just keeping yourself in check in that as well. Like, you know.
Oh man.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful or
dude,
not.
that gives me so many. There's so many more jumping off points there. But you know, when you're saying that, like, it just basically like, you know, a lot of different like philosophy books that I've read and like some spiritual books and religious books. You know, it's basically like getting down to just like go with the flow. You know, like Tao Te Ching is probably my favorite, and the analogies with water and just truly going with the flow. And like, there's this one passage in there that's like, a real leader is like someone who shows up and gets the people going and then steps out of the way, and then the people accomplish something and they think that they did it. And you're not going in being like, it was me. Exactly. It was like, and this is what like so many great teachings throughout this, you know, thousands of years that we have, I think really lead back to. And also like this, I heard recently that like during the days of like ancient Rome, when like, you know, a big, you know, military convoy would come back and there's like a massive parade in the street, and like the leader, the general or whatever, you know, the head guy would be up on his chariot coming through the streets of Rome, just like party, just people going nuts. They had someone stand behind him in the chariot saying, "You are just a man."
Oh, wow.
You are just a man.
That's amazing.
You are just a man. As he's being just like given this like massive appreciation from the people, they stationed someone behind him whispering that in his ear.
That's incredible.
And it's like, oh God. And so like getting into like the Stoic philosophy is like some of the best stuff I've been reading recently. And
imagine if we woke up and like chose, right, like we're going to choose to do something today for someone else, and we never filmed it and put it on social media. And that's what's going to bring people joy.
That's exactly where I was going to get, is like you were talking about this trip to Guatemala and how much it meant for you and that community and your family. It was both reciprocal. Yeah. So this is where like kind of like I find myself in a dilemma of like, you know, we are independent artists and social media is a massive part of our business. Like it's pretty much everything, like being able to share the projects, get new projects, everything. So it's like, I don't know if you run into this, but like, what do I post? And like, how am I posting it? Because I've gone in through like phases, and sometimes they're months long, where I just like, I don't want to engage with social media because I don't like what it's doing. But then I remind myself, Strider, this is just a tool. Like you can do damage with a hammer, or you could build something incredible with it. This is a tool. So it's up to you to decide how to use this tool to better, you know, my business, to better the world, you know? So like, is there any way that you have found like to engage with that?
Dude, that's so hard. 'Cause like I see the videos where they, you know, put a homeless person in a house because they did something on social media, right? And that's awesome for that person. And that did so much good. So I don't know 100% what the answer is, right? I think for myself, there are many things happening that my family is involved with that even saying it this is weird. Like we in our faith, we have in scripture it says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, right? So for us, that comes down to like, what are we doing with our finances and how we're serving, right? So there's things that are happening in our life that we will most likely not post about. And the reason is I've been on the other end of the stick. So working and living on 6th Street, and we would host like mission teams that would come in to help, and we needed their help, right? At the same time, we had groups that would come in, and it was literally like we were in a zoo. Like the photos taken of poor people, and like it was all about just making a really dramatic experience. Or even the way you see the double-decker tour bus drive through the Tenderloin, and people are with their cameras taking photos, right? Man, it's just like gut-wrenching when I see that, right? So even the videos online of the homeless person, right, that has this happen, some of them almost look uncomfortable. and it's almost like parading around their misfortune to act like we're some savior for somebody. Oh, that just breaks my heart when I see that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. I think if there's a specific vision behind a business and a goal in mind, that's one thing, right? So like I'll post that I'm working with the kids in the Bayview to help fundraise, sometimes for that. But when it comes to really traumatic stuff or like the stuff we're doing in Guatemala, right? I just don't feel I'm supposed to do that. Those things are more out of a conviction in my heart than they are a strategy. And I think people need to have more convictions of the heart.
I think you can really tell people's authenticity, you can kind of get that vibe as like, is this self-serving? Are you just like showing how, they call it virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Just like, look at how virtuous I am, giving out all this money, doing all this stuff, but really it's still kind of for like personal gain.
Yeah. It's a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a fine line.
Yeah.
It's really a fine line.
Well, speaking of kind of like, essentially like branding, I was wondering if we could just start to close this up talking maybe a little bit about some business stuff, because I know there's going to be a lot of artists listening to this. Absolutely. And people who are doing it, hobbyist passion, maybe interested in going professional, or some professionals that are really just getting started and just like needing to go a little bit further. You and I have done so many projects and ventures together that I've always been just blown away with your ability to kind of understand this world from a business standpoint. And like we talked about earlier, just kind of understanding like the state of the world and trends and things even in guiding, decisions of doing art as business. So if you were starting out, again, right now, you had skill, you had a passion, what would you do to maybe tip from being a hobbyist artist to going and trying to get paid full time?
That's a great question. What would I do starting out? Well, okay, so the way I did it was I was starting out part-time, and I would run the numbers on projects to make sure that the finances made sense if I switched over to full-time art. Right away, I could tell that if I had enough projects, I would make more money than I was before. So numbers are super important. Like don't just jump into it without doing some math. I know many artists aren't mathematicians, but basic math is so important, man.
This is algebra, people. We're not asking like calculus here.
Yeah, just run some simple numbers and make sure that they make sense. And that could even help in your decision, making it like exciting for you, right? Like if you're only putting 3 hours towards a project, break that down hourly and then make that equivalent to your 9-to-5 job and see if you're actually making more money there. Imagine if you put 100% into that thing. That's where we were. I realized if I took these other 40 to 60 hours a week that I'm doing and I put it 100% into art, I can't lose. So that's what made the decision for me. Now, something I had to learn in the beginning was that I was doing too much. So I was I was shooting commercials, directing video, I was doing murals, I was doing graphic design, shirts, like everything. I felt I needed to do everything because I was scared not to have the work. I learned quickly that it actually stunted the growth in any individual area. So I would say pick 1 or 2 areas and go 100% on those things. And as you develop that, if another area presents an opportunity, you don't take away from this area. You hire and budget what it's going to take to do that area, right? So say if video became a thing for me, if I felt that I could manage a separate type of art and I could hire a team to do it where all I'm doing is overseeing, then I could step into that. But to try to do all of that at the same time, it's actually detrimental.
Yeah.
So I've narrowed it down so much to I'm a muralist and I'm an events coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do graphic design anymore. I can do it. Even canvas painting, it's a rare occasion. I don't enjoy it. It actually takes me a week to paint a canvas where I could paint a 50-foot wall in 3 days, right? So, and understanding that canvas painting, you're doing the hourly investment without the promise of getting a paycheck, right? Whereas murals, you're getting paid and then you do the mural.
Yeah.
So starting to get smart in the way of what is the time and the investment that you're putting in with no promise of money, right? So you have to start thinking of, no, I need to get paid first. Then I need to execute, or you get paid half first and then you need to execute. That's going to start changing how you operate, right? So even if you are a canvas painter, how can you do that in a way where funding is coming in first, then you're creating, right? And that's essentially what businesses are doing. Maybe they're creating a one-off of a product and then they're making more after it gets sold, right? Or they're crowdsourcing first, or whatever like you need to do to create a smarter work process, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I started to do. I put a lot of my effort into relationship building and community organizing, because that is how I'm driven already. And I had a friend who was in business early on. He told me, you need to focus on that because you do it naturally. And it was hard for me at first because I'm like, dude, I don't want to get paid for that. That's weird. And he's like, no, but you just do it and then you'll get paid for it. So it's going to be easier for you because you're living in your state of where you thrive. It took me a couple years to realize that.
Yeah.
And I don't need to feel bad for that because I genuinely love doing it. And if I could create a business out of it, that's a plus. Right? So that was a lot. I don't know.
Oh, dude. I mean, I have 50 more questions, but yeah, I think, that's something I think every artist, like at first you just like want the paychecks, you want the jobs, and you'll take on a whole bunch. And like you said earlier in the conversation, that really like those like areas where you're stepping outside your comfort zone help like form you. And now over time you've whittled it down to like really saying that you do two things. And that absolutely was the same with me. Like I took so many different things, but I'm spinning so many different wheels, not getting traction on any of them. So to like slowly start to guide it towards like, here's what I do, 1 and 2 things, you start to get real momentum going forward. Now you also said, comparison to like painting a canvas, a mural, yes, you can put up the costs up front and go to the art store and buy canvases, and now you have a back catalog of work available. So you need to get clients, you need to get buyers to your online site, or maybe you work with a gallery and they display and get the canvases sold for you. With murals, you're going out there and getting the clients yourself, and you're getting paid up front as long as, they say, yes, we want you, like, boom, there's your money. That's great. Do you have any advice as to how to go and get clients, either for the murals or even driving traffic to you if you have items available, let's say, like in an online store, like archived canvases?
Yes. I think it's going to be different with every person. Like everybody's personality is different, right? For myself, there's multiple ways I've done this. For me, it comes down to knowing my stuff. Like I know what I'm doing. I really know how to paint murals. And I really know how to put on a festival. So I could go into a meeting and confidently answer every single question with that. So I think that's how I close my deals. As far as finding those opportunities, a lot of them are finding us right now, but it wasn't always like that, right? I would create a connection, and I would just fly out on my own dime to meet somebody, right? Or I don't let an application slip through the cracks. I don't miss a phone call. I don't miss a meeting. If I do, I feel like I freaking screwed up royally, right? I take as many opportunities as I can to meet someone face to face, and I think that is how we get most of our gigs. It's like we hear about something, I'm the first one that's going to call that person. I'm going to be the one that's stuck in their mind, right? If there's an artist call, I'm going to call and ask questions even if I don't have them, right? And I'm going to make sure my name is stuck in that person's head. That way, even if I don't get that gig, hopefully I get one a year later, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not manipulation. It's not anything other than I genuinely love community. I love people, and I want to paint for you, right? So I don't have to fake it. Like, it's naturally how I am. Not a lot of artists are like that. So what I would suggest is you might need a team. You might need somebody who is like that. You might need a curator who can do that for you, right? Or maybe you have a friend who's good at talking with people, and you're going to give them a percentage of all your work. Don't be so money hungry or think that like your art is worth so much that it's going to stunt you from getting gigs, right? Like sometimes you just got to share the love. And that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've read lots of business books over the last 5 years, and things that you can offload yourself to others. I mean, knowing definitely your strengths and weaknesses, like you were just saying, like if you're kind of an introvert artist and like you make incredible work, but you have a hard time kind of communicating about the work and like having sales come in, then that's why a lot of people do work with galleries. Have someone else represent you, or a manager of some type. That's one thing. But to be able to kind of offshoot, especially like, I don't know, like business and stuff, like if you can, like you and your wife like work together, which is incredible. I've actually hired a virtual assistant for different projects that I've done in the past, where I've had basically just like do a lot of research. I've like had an assistant like go and create a database of like interior designers and architects in like 20 cities, and I will just like reach out cold emails and say, hi, I'm Strider, here's my portfolio, like I love what you do, and I see some parallels between your and my work. If my work could be of any value to you and any upcoming projects of yours, like reach out anytime. That was like so probably key. Like 50 hours worth of work that literally anyone can do. And so that took off like so much weight from me. And so now I'm trying to like think of like other ways that I can, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is like the stuff that only you can do. And that's like the other part that you were talking, I was like, oh man, I recently heard, like business is like, what is the value that you're delivering? Are you incredible at doing at it? And like, how easy are you to be replaced? And it's like in this like triangle that you can have leverage. If you paint something that a lot of other artists can paint, then like good luck being able to drive a high price point, because you're replaceable. But as you progress in your creative practice and you start to like create this identifiable thing that like if you get to the point that only you can do it, and maybe like deluxe status, like you create something that like really like no one has done before, and you own that, then like you are really set. Like you're irreplaceable. And at that point there's many more doors that begin to open for you.
And I would even add to that the thing. So you said that make sure like you can't replace you, right? Sometimes it's not even about your art though. Like I could copy anybody's art. I could paint anything, right? And there's people that can paint what I paint. So what is different about me? It's my team, it's the execution, and it's the time frame, right? So I could finish the same painting maybe twice as fast as somebody else. So that's going to help me get in a business and get out. And so I'm not in their way all the time, right? And businesses desire that. So
painting a mural in an interior, it's like...
So you have to figure out if your art, backing up a little bit. One, again, recognizing your art isn't that special. All right. So I think that's super key. Is like, it's there's a million of you. So what's going to make you different? Oftentimes it's not even the art. It's the team, right? It's the execution and the planning. For example, recently I just got a gig. My bid was 4 times higher than the other person, and I still got the job. And it's because they explained to me what the other person was doing, and that person would have been there for a month and a half. They would have overspent the entire budget, and they would have came to them asking for more money in the long run, right? So I was able to confidently say, I don't know how they're doing that for that low. These are the prices of just clear coat alone, right? And knowing my industry so well, like their quote was like essentially the cost of materials, right? So just knowing my industry and then knowing my time frames really well, having the team of me and my wife, and then I also, if I'm curating a big event, I have a Rolodex of construction workers and artists. I know exactly what every person is good at and where they're going to be best in those positions. So I think that is what sets me apart.
Yeah.
Right? So if some other artist is creating a business, unfortunately, your art will probably not do that. 1% of artists, maybe less, get to the point where their art is what gets them the gig. Like that's a fraction of it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to start to think beyond your art of what is going to make me stick out in this moment. Right?
Oh man, and that's so true. It's like really, art as business, that means this is business. This is the exchange of money for services rendered. And this is value. So what is the value that you're providing? It's easy for us artists to be like, oh, well, the beauty and just like, being around this beautiful thing. And it's like, that's one part of it. And like you were just saying, but there's also like these other things like, I will be able to come in and be able to execute this in a fraction of the time, allowing you to get back into your space and open up operations again. Like now that's another level of value.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming in to paint like an office interior and you have to come in and work like the graveyard shift because it's a working office during the day and you're there for like 4 weeks at night, like that really is a pain in their side.
Yeah.
So to be able to understand that it's really value that you're providing someone else. Yes, the art is great, but also you're saving them a ton of time and
money.
And money.
Staffing.
They'll recognize
like,
that.
Yeah,
and if you have the expertise in knowing that is a part of the value package that you're delivering, can set you aside. Now, you've also said, you told me this a long time ago, talking about money and pricing. Us creatives like tend to just like price ourselves down just to get the job. And you have always been like, Strider, put your price up like higher. Like, what is it? And it's okay if they say no. Because if you put yourself at a price low, then you're always going to be that low guy. But if you put a price that's up high, like that first time a number is shared for a budget, it's like very important because it's kind of like the first foundation, and then you gauge left or right. And this literally just happened to me this week. A project that I was in the running for a couple years ago, gave them my budget, everything. They said no. I don't know if it was for the price or my style or what, but they said no. It's okay. Same company, architecture firm, just came back to me this week and was like, hey Strider, we have another project coming up and we put you in the running for it. And they're like, in the final contestant.
Yeah.
And now it's like that's at the price that I know is fair to me. And so they came back around, you know. I didn't get that first one, but you know, you told me one time, like, man, if you do the low price, you're just going to hate yourself that whole project. Yeah. It's going to be no fun. It's probably you're not going to do your best work during that time either because you're kicking yourself.
Yeah. And I can say the lower paying gigs are the hardest clients. They're the most picky clients.
Yeah.
The gigs that pay me really well, they barely have anything to say about the final piece. Like they see the design, they love it. They're like, let's get it done.
Yeah.
The lower gigs, oh my gosh, dude, the amount of back and forth.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, like, after so many hours, I'm charging you per hour now of back and forth. And like every single time they end up paying way more money anyway because they're just so difficult, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
It's tricky.
It's
tricky, but definitely like setting a price point. A lot of in the Bay Area, I think the median price is about $35 a square foot, but it can go up to like $50, you know, and then other states are like $25 a square foot is kind of the top. So it depends where you're at, and then sometimes curators are charging like even $100, like, you know. But I also adjust my square footage price. So if the mural's huge, I'm going to bring it lower to make sure it's in their budget. And if the mural's small, I'm going to bring it higher. But I'm also going to have a minimum when I'm charging. So having a minimum lets you know if you even want to go visit the job.
Yeah. Like, and you told me that too.
Yeah.
You're like, get the number up and out of the way immediately.
Yeah.
Because you can spend, you know, days back and forth in discussions and like, God forbid, actually doing some like initial designs and stuff. And it's like, and then you drop that this is going to be, you know, a $15,000 project. They're like, oh my God, like I thought this was going to be like $2,000. You're like, wasted time.
Yep.
So
could waste a whole week on that.
Oh yeah. And I mean, we've all been there. That's just like a lesson you got to learn, but hopefully you can learn this faster, people listening, because, you know, that's just something that you gotta, it's uncomfortable, but you get better at it. And then like you're saying with those great clients, it's like, you know, like they respect you because you know your stuff and you're just like, hey, so just gauging off the size of this, you know, this is probably going to be in the range of $15,000 to $25,000. Just want to get it up right away. Is that, you know, in the range you were thinking? And they'll say yes or no. Yeah. And then you like have a lot more information to go on. Yeah.
And don't chase it. Don't chase it. Again, we've had jobs where we said that. This literally just happened to us. We gave them our price range. They said no. We said, okay, we could recommend some other artists for you. They ended up coming back to us, so we had the gig. Yeah. Right. So we didn't chase the gig at all. Don't waste your time on that. Like, be excited about your work. You're going to produce a better product. Your family's going to be happier. Yeah. You're going to be more rested. Like, don't chase it if you don't need to. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, dude, I want to wrap this up. Be a little aware of our time. One more question for you.
Yeah.
What is beauty?
What is beauty? Well, that's defined differently by everyone. I mean, I think a good example I use often of the reason it's defined differently, right, is like in San Francisco we have these street poles on Folsom, and they're beautiful, and I think they're beautiful. They were painted illegally, and the city loves them. We also have an illegally painted Banksy piece in Chinatown that was covered in plexiglass, right? The city put plexiglass over it. But then I know kids who have tagged in an alleyway and their family got fined like $10,000 and he got thrown in jail at 16, right? So for me, I think tags are beautiful because I understand the energy, I understand the movement and the skill it takes to do it properly and the excitement that comes along with it, right? So I've always found it interesting that in one of the most liberal cities in the world is San Francisco, they're deciding what is beautiful and what is not. And that I don't think anybody can answer what is beauty because it's going to be an individual answer that everyone's worldview dictates.
Mm-hmm.
So, dude, I can't answer that. My wife is beautiful.
There you go. Yeah.
My kids are beautiful. I guess if there was a universal beauty, if there was a universal description of beauty, it wouldn't have to do with physicality. It would be, I think the entire world agrees that love is beautiful, joy is beautiful. I don't think anybody can battle that. I don't know. Mountains are beautiful.
Yeah.
If somebody said mountains are ugly, they're freaking weird, bro. Trees are ugly. Who doesn't like a tree? I don't know.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. How would you define it?
Well, I mean, I think it was like very telling that you immediately went to public art.
Yeah.
You know, that I think speaks to who you are in your world. And then you went toward your wife and then the natural world. Yeah, beauty is absolutely subjective. You know, mm-hmm. It's all different. But it's just something I've really been thinking about recently, and because of its subjectivity, I think like what's going on in the body, in the mind too, like not brain but like mind. Mm-hmm. I think beauty is kind of it's like an altered state of consciousness. You know, when you experience beauty, whether that's being at a live music event or mm-hmm. staring at a painting or seeing tags on the street mm-hmm. or experiencing a beautiful hike in nature. Mm-hmm. What that I think is doing is showing you some kind of like underlying architecture of your mind. And it's easy for us just to glance over and be like, that was great. But it's also like an opportunity for us to dig in deeper into like actually understanding ourselves. I see it as like an opportunity to find and dig around with understanding my true self, like mm-hmm. and again, not like this body but like this spirit. And because of its subjectivity, it's different for everyone, but I think it's like a glimpse, it's like a hint at what's really, really deep down. Mm-hmm. And I think there's just like something magical in there that mm-hmm. I've been kind of keyed into recently. And so I've been asking people that and trying to understand it. No, there's no universal thing for beauty. Maybe love, like you were saying, and joy, but I'm just curious as to what people think about that, and just like where they go first. You know, like we probably all jump into like the first thing that is prevalent in our lives. Public art, is that for you? But
that's so interesting to think about, because I mean, beauty is definitely, in a way, it's learned, but like the essence of it has to be universal.
It's like learned
in some way.
But then, like, you know, people ask you like why you like something, mm-hmm. and you can't even describe it. Like us even like trying to have mm-hmm. the words to describe our feeling that we have from like an object, like something out there,
or a color,
like seeing something can like create such an emotional reaction and feeling mm-hmm. that literally changes the chemistry in your body. Dopamine gets triggered, like you are completely in a different physiological like chemical state just from like even seeing something is like so fascinating. And I think about this from the world of art, because I just believe what we surround ourselves with matters incredibly. Like we can curate our daily life experience. You know, you have things that you surround yourself with that are like hanging on your wall, like artwork, or like the lamp on your table, or like whatever. I think so many people just like kind of like clutter stuff without really thinking about it. But it's like we can create these worlds and environments where we're able to like bring our best selves forward if we actually understand our relationship with these objects in our case, like with art.
Yeah.
And that goes to neighborhoods, like the work that you do with murals. Like this really has a profound effect on like a community.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you going to have like a billboard for the next, like, you know, whatever companies, like just like pummeling you in the community, telling you what to buy and what to think?
Mm-hmm.
Or could you have artwork there?
Yeah. But even that, some people don't like what I'm doing in the towns that I'm doing it in. There's always a small group that's kind of against it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to like, I'd be interested to get in the mind of like children, like babies even, if there's some universal truth of beauty. Like what are they experiencing in their senses? And if it's all across the board before life's experiences affect or dictate
totally
that, you know?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see even like mind stimulus or brain scanning and like what is the commonalities.
I'll have to try to get some like neuroscientists on this
show
dude. And see if I can ask them.
Because
they're probably our studies.
Yeah. There's studies, but I just think there's always going to be the unexplained, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Even going back to my faith, so many people in my world explain, and I'm just like, man, there's so much beauty in the not knowing. And just the trusting that, like, to me, God is just so much bigger than trying to understand any of this, and I just need to trust in that. Like, it's good to not know everything. We don't need to know everything, man. Mm-hmm. It's dangerous to try to figure it all out.
Well, the questioning and the science, it's great because it just leads to like more questioning, which like enables us to move forward. But I personally, speaking for me, like I can be very analytical, and I will like just try to like I'll consume way too much information, and getting to like the business side of art, like I will not take action because I'm like taking too much in. And so what I've been learning is to just like really just like truly like letting go, surrendering, like stop taking in. Now it's time to create. Like bring in, and this is like seasons, you know, this is just the natural way of things. Like bring in and then like let it out. And I think there's just like so much. There's so much there.
Don't get me wrong. I research things all the time. It's annoying how much I research, you know, science or beliefs or all these other things. And but I've definitely come to a point of like, we will never know everything. And that's okay.
And that's beauty.
That's okay to be.
There's beauty in that.
Yeah,
man, I feel that.
Yeah, because it becomes overwhelming if we just try to control every outcome or like discovering every outcome. It's man, that could be a weight to bear.
And the great masters are just kind of, you know, seems like the real great teachers and masters just have this like ability just to like let things be they are.
Yeah, just be, man.
Just be.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, dude. Let's cap this baby off and schedule the next like 5.
I know, dude. It's so good.
Well, Cameron, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you and recognize you as such an incredible human being at this time and place. It is just with huge amounts of gratitude that I'm happy our paths crossed. You have had a huge impact on my life and my family. You're one of my groomsmen at my wedding.
I know.
And I will probably be able to get the rest of the groomsmen on this show too, because everyone's doing really cool art stuff. But thank you for everything that you shared with me. And I hope that, you know, some people might come on to this, see this online, listen to this, and be able to get some good information that they can practice into their lives, both like spiritually and artistically and business wise. You know, you have a certain level of moral integrity that not many people have right now. And so thank you for bringing that to the world in the ways that you do, because you're creating beautiful ripples. And so I just want to say thank you for your presence and your art.
I appreciate that. And likewise, man, You're doing the same, man. Like, I see you with your family and just all the work you're doing, and you're killing it. So
thanks, buddy.
yeah, the world's better with you in it, for sure.
Well, let's get out there and keep bringing some good.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, we're going to cap this off. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Peace. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Cameron as much as I did. He's just doing incredible work, bringing so much beauty to the world with his art, him and his family. It's just wonderful. So please do me a favor and give Cameron some love. Support him, show him some love on social media, follow him on Instagram, and I think he's on TikTok. Go to his website, check it all out. Share Cameron's work because the world needs it. If you want to stay up to date with everything on this podcast and in my world with art releases, art projects, podcast, vlog, everything, the best place to do that is my newsletter. So you can head over to my website or the link in my bio, striderpatton.com/newsletter, and sign up there. This is the best place so I can quickly and easily share new podcast conversations, new vlogs, new educational tips that I'm putting out, as well as new art projects and releases in my world. All right, everybody, that was so much fun, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. See you out there.